So, what really makes a hit song? Is it just some spark of human genius, a moment of pure, unexplainable feeling? Or is it a puzzle, a formula of rhythm, melody, and harmony that can actually be understood, replicated, and maybe even automated? Today, we're going to dig in and find out. This is the big question, right? It kind of pits the artist against the engineer, the heart against the algorithm. And believe it or not, back in 2012, one researcher set out to find an answer by building a machine to do exactly that. And this quote from the research paper itself it nails the whole challenge perfectly. On one side, you've got that intangible feeling of music, and on the other, you've got the technical nuts and bolts. The goal here was to see if an engineer's super technical approach could somehow capture a songwriter's magic. Okay, so our story really kicks off with this fascinating paper from 2012 by Anders Alofsson. He basically went on an engineer's quest to reverse engineer a hit song, to find those hidden rules that make music popular, and then build a program that could actually follow them. But here's the thing. Before you can even think about building a music machine, you have to understand how we, the listeners, actually process music. It's not just about playing random notes. It's about how our brains perceive and organize sound into something that feels meaningful and, memorable. It all starts with this really cool concept from psychology. Our brains are basically pattern-finding machines. We're just naturally drawn to what they call good patterns, things that are simple, orderly, and predictable. And why? Well, it's because they're just easier for our minds to process, to remember, and to describe. Our brains love simplicity. This leads to a super crucial idea called chunking. Think about it. A long, unbroken string of numbers is a total nightmare for our short-term memory. But you break it into smaller, predictable chunks, like a phone number, and boom, suddenly it's easy to remember. Our brains automatically group information to make it manageable. So, how in the world does this relate to a hit song? Well, the rhythm, the drum beat, the pulse, it creates that predictable pattern our brains are desperate for. It acts like a framework which lets us chunk the melody into smaller bite-sized phrases. This makes the whole melody way easier to process and remember. And this leads to a pretty wild conclusion. When it comes to recognizing a song, the rhythm is actually more important than the melody itself. Okay, so now we have the building blocks. Our brain's love for simple patterns and its need to chunk information. But the real secret, the big aha moment of this whole research paper, is how those two things, rhythm and melody, have to fit together perfectly to create a good song. The paper calls it global joint accent structure. Yeah, I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is beautifully simple. It just means that a melody sounds good and feels right when its most important notes, like the stressed words, the high points, land squarely on the strong, accented beats of the rhythm. Think of the kick and the snare drum. There has to be this fundamental agreement between them. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory cooked up in a lab. This quote from Swedish music producer Bjorn Olsen shows that this is exactly how people who make hit records actually think. The rhythm section isn't just there to show off. It's there to build a strong foundation that supports the melody. So, here's the crucial point. The drums create a roadmap of where the important moments are supposed to happen. The melody is the car. When that car hits all the key points on the map at exactly the right time, the whole journey just feels smooth, satisfying, and memorable. That is a hit song. All right. So with this powerful theory in hand, it was time to put it to the test. The researcher built a program to do just that. PAC, the Popular Algorithmic Composer. Its whole mission was to see if this roadmap theory could actually generate a good song. So how does a program like this actually write music? It uses a statistical method called a Markov chain. Let's not get too technical, just think of it like predicting the weather. The model looks at the current state, let's say it's sunny today, and then it calculates the probability of what tomorrow will be. PAC does the exact same thing, but for music. Instead of sun or rain, it looks at the note or chord that was just played and calculates the probability of what the next most likely note or chord should be, all based on patterns from hundreds of hit songs. So PAC's process for building a song is incredibly logical, and it pretty much mirrors how a human producer might work. First, it sets the foundation, the tempo. Then it creates that rhythmic roadmap we talked about, the drum pattern. On top of that, it lays down the harmony with a chord progression. Next, it organizes those chords into phrases, like verses and choruses. Only after all of that structure is in place does it even touch the melody. It starts with the melody's rhythm, figuring out when the note should hit. And for the very final step, it chooses the actual melody pitches. The body gets built, before the voice even starts to sing. And to make sure its decisions sounded legit, Pack was fed a ton of real-world data. For instance, get this. After analyzing 123 popular songs, the researcher found the average tempo was 113.7 beats per minute. So Pack's choices weren't just random. They were guided by what has actually been successful in popular music. Which, of course, brings us to the moment of truth. After all this theory, all this data, and all this programming, could the machine actually write a decent song? Well, the results were fascinating. Okay, so here's what happened. The program was great at the structural stuff. I mean, it nailed the tempo and the drum patterns. It generated chord progressions that made total sense. And it structured the song into logical phrases. But, and this is a big but, where did it struggle? The actual notes of the melody. And this isn't just my take on it. This quote from the paper's own abstract confirms everything. The framework, the foundation, that roadmap we talked about, all of that was solid. But that final, crucial step of choosing the right sequence of notes to create a tune that's actually compelling and memorable, that turned out to be the hardest challenge. You know, to put it another way, the algorithm was a fantastic architect. It could design the house, pour the foundation, put up all the walls. It successfully built the body of the song, but it just couldn't quite find its soul. And that leaves us right back where we started, but with a much, much deeper understanding. The structure of a hit song is very much a formula, one that can definitely be learned and replicated by a machine. But perhaps that final layer, that little melodic spark, is where the feeling really lives, a gap that for now remains uniquely, stubbornly, and, yeah, beautifully human.